In the last section, we spoke about the National Environmental Management Act as an overarching legal framework with which the environment is managed in South Africa. In this section, we are going to be talking about the sub-regulations that functions closely with the NEMA. Also, in the last section, we discussed the definition of the environment according to the NEMA. The definition of the environment outlined by the NEMA distinguishes different parts of the environment that needs to be managed using specific regulations or sub-regulations. There are 5 specific regulations that functions closely with the NEMA. In this section, we're going to be delving deep discussing the specific Environmental Management Acts. The specific Environmental Management Acts are sub-regulations which are also abbreviated as the SEMA. These specific laws deals with the management of specific sectors of the environment. Up to date, there are about 5 specific National Environmental Management Acts which deals with biodiversity, air quality, waste, protection of endangered species, and coastal areas management. We are going to delve deep and discuss in detail all these specific acts. Let's start with the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act, Act number 10 of 2004. This act is also abbreviated as the NEMA. The aim of the Act is to conserve and protect South Africa's rich biodiversity. One of the reasons the Act was promulgated was to respond to the Global Convention on Biological Diversity. The Convention on Biological Diversity is a multilateral treaty that has 3 main objectives: the conservation of biological diversity, the sustainable use of its components, and the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising from the genetic resources. The Convention on Biological Diversity was first drafted in 1992. The NEMA in South Africa was enacted in 2004. The main objective of the Act is to conserve and sustainably use South Africa's biodiversity, promote equitable access to and utilization of genetic resources, and also to ensure a fair and equitable sharing of all the benefits derived from biodiversity. The objective of the NEMA coincides with that of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Let's look at some of the key provisions that the NEMA provides. Number 1 is the protected areas. The Act provides for the management of protected areas. Number 2 is the threatened and protected species. The Act also provides for the listing of threatened species and those that need to be protected. Number 3, bioprospecting and benefits sharing. The Act also regulates bioprospecting activities. Number 4, invasive species control. This Act also allows the responsible authorities to regulate invasive species that may pose a significant threat to the native species. Number 5, research monitoring. The Act also promotes the research and monitoring of species for better conservation. Number 6, access and benefits sharing agreements. The NEMA Access and Benefits Sharing Agreement. So the Act allows the negotiation of ABS agreements with indigenous and local communities to ensure they benefit from all the commercial use of traditional knowledge and genetic resources. The last provision will be compliance and enforcement. The Act also establishes penalties for non-compliance with its provisions and also includes provisions for enforcement, inspections, and compliance monitoring. Now let's go to the sky. The National Environmental Management Air Quality Act 39 of 2004. In South Africa, the specific environmental management law that deals with the atmosphere and the air around us is called the National Environmental Management Air Quality Act, Act number 39 of 2004. This specific law was enacted to protect human health and the environment from the adverse effects of air pollution and to promote the sustainable use of air resources. The primary objective of the Act is to protect and improve air quality, prevent air pollution, and to promote the efficient and sustainable use of air resources in South Africa. Let's look at some of the key provisions that the Act provides. The first provision that the Act provides is the air quality management. That is the development of national, provincial, and local air quality management plans. These plans assist in setting air quality standards and objectives. The second provision that the Act provides is the establishment of emission standards. Emission standards and limits for various pollutants to control emissions from industrial, commercial, and other sources. Another provision that the Act provides is the atmospheric impact assessment. This means that there are activities and developments that need to undergo atmospheric impact assessment to assess their potential impact on air quality. The Act also allows that there be designated air quality officers at various government levels to oversee and enforce compliance with the Act's provisions. From officers to licenses, the Act also provides permitting and licensing for activities that may have a significant impact on air quality, such as industrial processes and waste incinerations. Offences and penalties are also some of the provisions that the Act provides. The National Environmental Management Protected Area Act, Act number 57 of 2008. The Protected Area Act is also known as NEMA. This piece of legislation focuses on the management of protected areas within South Africa. One of the reasons why it was enacted is to provide a legal framework for the establishment and management and protection of the protected areas. This act focuses on the protection of national parks, nature reserves, and other conservation areas. This particular act works closely with the National Biodiversity Act. The objective of the Act is to establish a comprehensive framework for the management, conservation, and sustainable use of the protected areas, as well as to ensure that protected areas contribute to South Africa's environmental, social, and economic goals. Let's look at some of the provisions that NEMA provides. Number 1. Declaration and management of protected areas. The Act gives an outline and procedures that allows for the declaration and management of protected areas. Number 2. Management plans. This Act also allows for the development of management plans for the protected areas, which will give in detail conservation objectives, ecological monitoring, and visitors management strategies. Number 3. Buffer zones. This Act also allows the development of buffer zones around protected areas for their protection. Number 5. Ecological sustainable development. This Act places more emphasis on the principle of ecological sustainable development in the management of protected areas, ensuring that conservation efforts consider social and economic factors. Number 6. Protected area expansion. The Act allows for the expansion or reduction of protected areas through a formal process, taking into account ecological, social, and economic factors. Number 7. Offences and penalties. The Protected Areas Act also deals with offences related to the contravention of the Act and allows penalties for non-compliance. Number 8. This Act finally promotes intergovernmental cooperation by encouraging the cooperation between national, provincial, and local government spheres. Let's talk about waste. The National Environmental Management Waste Act, Act 59 of 2008. Any society that is functional and has people thriving to meet their daily needs for survival will in some way produce waste into the environment. Hence, there is a need to manage those waste for the protection of the environment and the well-being of its inhabitants. In 2008, the National Environmental Management Waste Act, Act number 59, was enacted for the efficient management of waste in South Africa. This piece of legislation promotes the protection of the environment and human health by ensuring that waste is managed in an environmentally sound and sustainable manner. There are several provisions that this Act provides. Number 1. Definition of waste. This Act defines what exactly is meant by waste. According to the Act, waste can be categorized into either hazardous waste, general waste, and also electronic waste. Number 2. Waste management hierarchy. The Act also establishes a waste management hierarchy that prioritizes waste avoidance, reduction, reuse, recycling, and recovery over disposal. This Act encourages the minimization of waste generation and the promotion of recycling and resources and recovery. Number 3. Licensing and registration. It requires certain activities related to waste management, including the operation of waste disposal facilities and recycling operations, to be licensed or registered with the relevant authorities. Number 4. Duty of care. The Act places a duty of care on waste generators, transporters, and managers to ensure that waste is managed in an environmentally responsible manner. Number 5. Extended Producers Responsibility, EPR. The Act promotes EPR schemes where producers are responsible for the waste generated by their product. This encourages manufacturers to design products with reduced environmental impact and take responsibility of their product at the end of their life cycles. Number 6. Waste management plans. Various sectors and spheres of government are required to develop and implement waste management plans to guide the management of waste in their areas of responsibility. Number 7. Waste classification and listing. The Act establishes a system for classifying and listing waste to determine how it should be managed and regulated. Number 8. Waste Information System. It provides for the establishment of waste information system to track and monitor waste generation, management, and disposal in South Africa. Number 9. Enforcement and penalties. The Act sets out provisions for enforcement, inspections, and penalties for non-compliance with its provisions. Lastly, number 10. Public participation. It encourages public participation in waste management decision-making process. The fifth specific Environmental Management Act that we're going to be dealing with, it is the National Environmental Management Integrated Coastal Management Act, Act 24 of 2008. Now let's go to the coast of South Africa. The coastal side of the country are recognized and characterized by their unique ecological, environmental, and geological features that result from the dynamic interactions between land and water. Coastal zones typically extend inland from the shoreline and can vary in width depending on the factors such as topography, climate, and human development. For the management of coastal zones in South Africa, the National Environmental Management Integrated Coastal Management Act 24 of 2008 is enacted to manage all the coastal zones in South Africa. We're going to cover 8 provisions that the Act establishes. The first one is the Integrated Coastal Management. This Act establishes a framework for the integrated management of South Africa's coastal areas, taking into account environmental, social, and economic factors, emphasizes the need for coordinated and holistic planning and decision-making. Number 2, the coastal management areas. The Act designates coastal management areas and requires the development of coastal management programs for each area. These programs aim to address specific coastal challenges and opportunities within defined regions. Number 3, coastal zone planning. It promotes the development of coastal areas management plans, CMPs, to guide land use and development activities in coastal areas, with an emphasis on sustainable development and environmental protection. Number 4, environmental impact assessment, EIAs. The Act requires that development activities in the coastal zones undergo environmental impact assessment to assess potential environmental impacts and to ensure sustainable development practices. Number 5, protected areas. The Act provides for the establishment and management of coastal protected areas, including marine protected areas, to conserve biodiversity and protect ecological sensitive coastal habitats. Number 6, regulations of activities. It regulates various activities in the coastal zones, such as coastal development, fishing, and aquaculture to ensure they are carried out sustainably and in accordance with environmental principles. Number 7, marine pollution control. The Act addresses marine pollution prevention and response, including measures to mitigate oil spills and other forms of pollution in coastal and marine environments. Lastly, number 8, enforcement and penalties. It sets out provisions for enforcement, compliance, monitoring, and penalties for non-compliance with its provisions.